Retro.
Hey, this is Catherine Tabor, Senator Padme Amidala from Star Wars The Clone Wars, and you're listening to Jay and Dennis on Podcast Stardust. Stay on the light side.
Hey there, welcome to Podcast Stardust. This is the fully armed and operational podcast dedicated to Star Wars news, reviews, and discussion. I'm Dennis Keithley.
And I'm Jay Krebs.
And it's Monday, so that's bad news. But the good news is we're going to talk about some Clone Wars. And with that in mind, Jay, I want to remind everybody where we can be found around the internet.
Sure thing. We can be found every day of the week on Facebook, X, and Instagram at Podcast Stardust.
Okay, the dish is aligned, the signal is boosted to maximum output, the shield is down, we are now broadcasting to the galaxy. So we are on episode 15 of season 1 of the Clone Wars, and that episode is entitled Trespass. So we're doing a full spoiler discussion. This episode's been around since 2008, no, even earlier than that. So like 2008 or so. Yeah, if you haven't seen it, go check it out. But anyways, that's giving you an opportunity to pause and put this one away if you didn't want to hear it. So Jay, you want to go ahead and give us the summary of this episode, please?
Sure thing. Anakin, Obi-Wan, Chairman Chi-Cho of the Pantorans, and Senator Chuchi arrive on the frozen moon of Orto Plutonia to investigate Republic outposts that have been recently attacked and lost. Although they first suspect that the Separatists are behind the attacks, their discovery of destroyed battle droids reframes their thinking. They soon learn that the Talz are behind the attacks. Obi-Wan and Anakin successfully negotiate a peaceful resolution, but Chairman Chi-Cho will not have it and declares the Talz to be trespassers. In the ensuing conflict, Chairman Chi-Cho receives a mortal wound, but Senator Chuchi, empowered by the Pantoran Assembly, successfully negotiates a peaceful resolution with the Talz.
Props to you for getting all the Chi-Chos and Chuchis and everything straight in that summary there. That's can be hard to say. Yeah. What'd you think about this episode, Jay?
Okay, I forgot how much I loved this episode, quite honestly. It is enraging in a lot of ways because Chi-Cho is definitely, you just want to just take the guy by the cuff and just smack him around a little bit. But it really does show how arrogant some of these sovereignties started to become when they were empowered by different entities within either the Republic or the Separatists, on both sides. And but I think it's a great illustration of who really is the quote unquote owner of a particular area of things, and getting to see the Talz. They're so cool, and I know you've got some trivia in here about them, and just getting to see the origins of Chuchi, Riyo Chuchi, and she ends up being a very instrumental part of the history of Star Wars, especially with the clones going forward. Great episode.
Yeah. She shows up regularly in the Bad Batch, and then we got to see her. Did we get to see her in Tales of the Jedi or not? I can't remember, but I know she was around quite a bit in the Bad Batch, constantly weaving in and out of that story, trying to find some sort of a resolution for the clone issue. These clones all fought for the Republic and they're being left to dry, hung out to dry. And then she is working on legislation to find some way of taking care of them for the rest of their lives there. So she ends up becoming a big character, but she grows a long way from her first appearance here, but we'll get into that in just a second. Yeah, I like this episode. The problem I always run into it is that, if you listened last week, you heard me just glow about how much I love Defenders of Peace. That's one of my favorite episodes of all time. And then this one follows it. And so when I'm binging Clone Wars, it's just kind of like I come off the high of my favorite episode and I get to this one. So I like the fact that I got to watch this one by itself this week, so I can really, truly appreciate it for what it is and not the follow-up to Defenders of Peace. Because to your point, it definitely stands on its own quite well. It's a very good episode here, and it's got a lot of things going for it. So yeah, some facts behind this episode. This would be the first appearance of the Pantorans in the Clone Wars. And eagle-eyed viewers, and kind of common knowledge to most Star Wars fans at this point, remember that the Pantorans first appeared in Revenge of the Sith, and they were portrayed by George Lucas and his daughter Katie Lucas in kind of a cameo role outside of the Opera House. George Lucas' character was Baron Notluski Papanoida, and Katie's was Chi Ikwe Papanoida, and we'll see them later in a later season of the Clone Wars. So this is not the, that's not the last we'll ever see of them. Of course, they're this blue skin species that has a lot of yellow tattoos. Other notable appearances of Pantorans in Star Wars would include Ryola Kivan, who was the captain of the Halcyon, the now defunct Galactic Star Cruiser, which we're all hoping will come back in some fashion. And then more recently, Kevmo Zink, who was the Pantoran Jedi Padawan from Phase 2 of the High Republic, who died from being exposed to the Nameless. And he was kind of a romantic interest for Marga Rowe in that series as well. So what do you make of the Pantorans?
Oh, I really like their species a lot, and I'm glad that you did a little bit more framing with some of the other Pantorans that we've seen because, I know Kevmo Zink being a Pantoran, but I, for whatever reason, didn't kind of put them both together. I guess just being in print form versus visually, it's like, oh yeah, I guess he would have looked like that. But he's been on a couple of covers and things as well. But no, I think they're an awesome species. I think that they are, just a fun humanoid kind of a species that lends themselves very well into the Star Wars lore.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I like them quite well. It is fun that, this was really, as so many different aliens are that become iconic in Star Wars. There's this little cameo appearance for George Lucas in Revenge of the Sith. And then all of a sudden now it's a species that's got a whole lot of its own backstory going forward in Star Wars. And it spawns the character of Senator Chuchi, who we were just talking about, becomes very important in other projects as well. So, that's one half of this episode. And then the other significant faction that we've got are the Talz. And this is also their first appearance in Clone Wars. They are kind of the big white abominable snowman type characters here that got the little, I don't even know what you want to call it, little suction cup type mouth and the big circular eyes, the noises. And the first one we ever saw was in the Mos Eisley Cantina at the bar having a drink. And the backstory on this is that George Lucas chose them because he wanted to create some sort of a Western story where you have indigenous people fighting back against the superior military, which would be the clones and Jedi and lightsabers and the like. And this comes out of the art of the Clone Wars. And then to flesh them out, he drew upon the Inuit, who are indigenous people up in the northwestern part of North America, to design their clothing and their habitats. We can't understand anything they say. 3PO has to translate for them. But again, this is a character that, outside of a brief appearance in the cantina, really did not have a large presence in Star Wars until they got included here. But what do you think about the Talz?
Right. No, I'm so glad that they, like I said, I think they did a great job of utilizing this design concept in this character that, like you said, we see just so briefly in the cantina, and their little mouths kind of always reminded me of like a fly, like when the fly would like stick their tongue out, kind of a thing. But no, I'm glad that they recycled, if you want to put it that way, into something like this to give them more backstory and just to give us a little bit more of an appreciation of who they are, where they come from, and so thinking about the fact that that particular Talz got to Tatooine is very, very also ironic, because when they first land on the planet itself and they get off the ship, Anakin and Obi-Wan, and Anakin remarks, "This isn't Tatooine."
Yeah.
And then Obi-Wan says, "And this is the tropics." So it's just kind of like a fun little parallel kind of a thing, that somehow this Talz that came from this really cold planet ended up on Tatooine in the cantina. You kind of wonder how. At least I do.
Well, this is not the only place you can find Talz. They happen to settle on this moon, but I can't remember the name of their other homeworld here. So one of the things that Chairman Chi-Cho will bring up over this is that they're trespassers, that this moon is in Pantoran space and that they have, this is under their control. But it's like, what do you care, man? It's a winter wasteland, so to speak. I mean, it's, in a way, it's a desert of its own. Nothing's really growing here. You don't have any presence. You're not doing anything here. But he was just really offended by the notion that they were on Pantoran soil, of all things. But there's a bit of a backstory here. Again, this is actually, I think it's a moon. Actually, I put it in our notes, a planet, but Ordo Plutonia is based on Ralph McQuarrie's original concept for Hoth. And this is the subject of the featurette on StarWars.com for this episode. And it's Dave Filoni kind of talking about how, when, again, it's based on the concepts of arts for Hoth that weren't really followed through as much because they ended up filming Hoth on location. I believe it was in Norway or Iceland. I can't remember. One of those Northern European countries. But and then they did some blue shifting there. Whereas with this, they were able to really dig into Ralph McQuarrie's art and come up with the ice spires and then like kind of some of the ice bridges and things like that. And to really create something that is more than just big fields of snow when it comes, and with some caves there. I don't know. I don't think I ever really noticed or paid too much attention until to this moon until I saw that featurette. Because one of the things that Dave Filoni points out is that, they spent all this effort on the effects for snow. They had like 5 different types of snowfall that they used over the course of this episode. And there's a blizzard going on for most of it. But one of the coolest things he points out that I had never noticed until I saw it, as he was saying it, is that when Chuchi and the chieftain from the Talz come to their deal, the blizzard breaks and the snow subsides.
Oh, yeah. I guess I didn't put that together either. That's cool.
Yeah, kind of subtle there.
Very, very, representative, iconic.
But you brought up Senator Chuchi again, and we already made mention about how important she becomes later. But here she is very, very inexperienced, and she's kind of apprehensive about contradicting Chairman Chi-Cho. I'm sorry, I just got to laugh. Chuchi, Chi-Cho, with these names here. And no matter how much she believes that, what this course that he's pursuing is not right, she's not really willing to stand up to him over it, to the point that, she's trying to get Obi-Wan to do the negotiating on her behalf. But, again, what do you think about her and her appearance and her development here?
Well, first of all, I mean, she is a senator. So she was obviously appointed or voted into that spot to be a representative for Pantora. And, as far as Chi-Cho goes, I mean, he just is basically on his high horse. He thinks that he's all that, the bag of chips and the dip too. He's seen it all. He's done it all. He even says that to her, and he belittles her into thinking, that she doesn't have enough of an integrity type of thing to be able to put her 2 cents in. And so, Chuchi just kind of takes it because I think just out of respect, he is her elder. He is a statesman. He is, she calls him Your Majesty. And so it is someone that is higher than her, obviously, in the Pantoran hierarchy. So I think part of that is just she's doing it out of respect. I don't think that it's necessarily that she was afraid to. I think that she's a rule follower. So she wanted to make sure that she did things through the proper channels, but yet she wasn't above, asking Obi-Wan, who is someone that's benevolent and a Jedi who is a friend to the Pantorans, obviously, in the way that they're associated, to maybe step in on her behalf because she doesn't want to overstep her boundaries. So, it doesn't come to the point until she almost has to pull a Padme, almost like a vote of no confidence kind of a thing in him because he's just such a jerk.
Yeah, but see, still, I think there is she was reluctant to even like negotiate with the Talz during part of this. She leans, tells Obi-Wan's like, I appreciate, your guidance, and makes reference to his experience. And he's like, I can't. This is an internal matter for the Pantorans. This is, we serve the Senate, but we can't get involved here. And I think beyond that, he saw some potential in her and recognized, she's a senator. She's going to have to step up on
Mhm.
this, because she could be a valuable ally on things like that. And she does rise to the occasion. She goes to the Pantoran assembly, lays out what's happening, and then they decree that, Chicho is out of order and that she's then empowered to go negotiate a peaceful resolution to all of this. And
Sure.
even then, at this end of this episode, she really has to summon her courage to go talk about this with the chieftain. And, she makes that speech about, I can't remember exactly how it goes. And so I'm paraphrasing here. It's like, to die for your people is, great sacrifice and great honor. However, it's even more difficult to live for your people. And, she lifts up the spear and then she dives it into the snow. And it's like, I choose to live for my people. And, basically she's, and it's a stark contrast what Chicho just did. He declared them savages or trespassing, and he believed in their superior might and technology, and he was going to take them down and show them who's who. But what does that get them? Nothing. And so she's presenting a different way, which gets through to the chieftain, thanks to the translation of C3PO.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, I think for Chuchi, there was just she had no frame of reference for any of
Hmm.
this going into it because she was young, but she was trying to defer to whatever Chicho was doing. But I do think that Obi-Wan, he on one hand, yes, he couldn't have really done anything about it, as he said. He probably could have. I mean, we know Obi-Wan and Anakin both,
Hmm.
Anakin maybe a little more so, to overstep what they are supposed to do, quote unquote. But I
Hmm.
do think that Obi-Wan would have definitely done Chuchi a disservice if he had stepped in, because
Yeah.
she did have to learn and she did have to, as I said, this was her first real, you know, experience with something like this, and she needed that. And I think this is the genesis for how amazing she becomes later on.
Hmm. Well, and to your point, Obi-Wan and Anakin had already negotiated a truce with
Right.
the Talz in this. And the
The
fact is, though,
negotiator.
well, and then the Pantorans broke it through Chairman Chicho's actions. And
Right.
so, Obi-Wan can't then step in again. If there's to be any type of lasting peace, the Pantorans have to reach it with the Talz themselves. The Jedi just can't keep coming back. They can't maintain their own garrison there to make sure that everyone's going to get along peacefully. But then on top of that, Chuchi tells them, is like, we respect your sovereignty and we'll leave this world to your care
Hmm.
on that, which again, it's just, Chicho was being belligerent about this because he could. I don't think he
Yes.
actually cared about that moon at all.
Exactly. And I was going to make that point as well, that he was doing it just out of his own ego and just
Hmm.
out of spite. And that there was pretty much no other reason, because like you said, it was a wasteland. Like, why does he even care about this moon?
Hmm.
And that was the only reason why.
So on a completely unrelated note, one of my favorite little elements of this was that 3PO was driving his own speeder bike. Did you notice that?
No, I did not.
Yeah,
Oh,
because the
that's
speeder
hilarious.
bikes were only big enough for one person, so he had to drive his own. And, we don't typically think of 3PO as any type of a driver, pilot, or anything like that. But I
No.
mean, you think back to A New Hope, I think it was originally him supposed to be driving the speeder when he and Luke were looking for R2D2 out in the
Mhm.
desert
Yes. Yes.
there. But, typically he's a passenger in these type of
Uh-huh.
things. But there he's in the background at the controls of one of these bikes at least once.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe I missed that. And
Yeah.
can I just say how, and I know it's animation and it's all, fiction, but how Chicho stayed on the hood of Rex's speeder and didn't
Mhm.
fall off the whole time. I
Yeah.
was just thinking to myself, he's not like a, well, first of all, he was a carcass, I guess you could say, but it was just, I don't know, I was cracking up about that.
Yeah, I gotta say, I really like the action here in this episode. I thought it was cool that the Talls were ambushing the clones, by hiding in the snow, and they would reveal just a couple of them, and then they'd pop out of the snow and then surround the clones and stuff like that, and then take the fight to them that way. I I don't know that this was intended, but there is an awful lot of instances over this season where the clones just kind of come off as fodder.
They do. Yeah, this is definitely one of those times for sure.
Right. I mean, because,
And it's
you know,
unfortunate.
well, and Chicho's loss was being played as a much bigger event, but there were several clones that got killed during this
Mhm.
whole thing as well. And, I think back to the Jedi Crash Defenders of Peace two-parter, in Jedi Crash, 3 of the clones die, but it's okay. Anakin's still alive back with the camp we set up near the crash ship. We can lose these 3 clones. And it's just kind of almost like no one really pays it any mind. And that's not the memory I had of the Jedi and the relationship with the clones before this rewatch. I always kind of viewed them as being much more companionable there, that the Jedi's respect for life was, included the clone. And I'm not saying it necessarily did, but it seems like they're just kind of taken for granted. I mean, outside of Yoda talking about how he values all of them in the very first episode of this season,
Right.
it doesn't seem like they, and maybe it's just faulty memory on my part, but it doesn't seem like they really stopped to think about the average clone.
Yeah, and I think as Rex says when they ask, "How many of your men did you lose?" And I think Rex says 11
Mhm.
and several more injured or something like that, or maybe that was 11 that were injured. But at any rate, I wonder if part of that too is, and I'm with you, by the way, I feel like there's a lot more of a feeling of that cannon fodder about the
Mhm.
clones on this rewatch. And I'm wondering if it's partially because of the fact that we now are so focused on the clones as individuals because of what we've gotten since, such as the Bad Batch. And, and I was wondering actually as I was watching this myself, if that may, once again, like I said, is the genesis for Riyo Chuchi, to take it upon herself to work with the clones to try to give them their rights, because she did witness in her very first kind of coming of age assignment, if you will, how much of cannon fodder these clones became during this
Yeah.
experience.
Well, and I think as this series goes on, we'll find that there is more consideration paid for the average clone
Mhm.
as things go along. I mean, I know the very next episode has got some very clone centric stuff going on, but
Oh,
even
yeah.
back to I now that I'm thinking about it, I guess there was more consideration paid for the clones in that rookies episode when they were defending the listening post that we've already
Mhm.
talked about, and then Anakin and Obi-Wan kind of recognized them at the end, but they gave the 2 survivors, Fives and Echo, medals there, but there wasn't a whole lot of thought spared for the ones that died there, but
Right.
at least from the Jedi. So anyway,
Mhm.
something to keep an eye on as we get through our rewatch of this.
Yeah, for sure.
Mhm. Anything else stand out to you about this episode that we need to address?
I love the Narglatch, the animals that the
Mhm.
Talz were riding, and I looked them back up, in the episode guide and everything, because I didn't remember what they were called, and I just think they're such a great design for an animal, and I just love them. I love their tails. They almost look like something that you might see in like a medieval mace, kind of thing. So they're almost
Mhm.
dinosaur-like, but yet griffin-like, but very, adaptable to this particular terrain. I don't know. I just really liked them a lot. And I also caught when Anakin said to Chuchi, "Most impressive." And that's a Vader thing later on. Impressive,
Yeah.
most impressive.
I first saw the Narglatch in the old Star Wars MMORPG, Star Wars Galaxies and Empire Divided,
Oh,
and you could
okay.
find them on various planets. And I remember when I saw them, I'm glad you brought the Narglatch up because I'd forgot to mention this. When the first time I saw them in this episode, I was like, wait, I used to see those things in Star Wars Galaxies all the time because I used to play that game a lot.
Oh,
Uh,
gotcha.
so I didn't do enough in-depth research on this to figure out exactly what they were designed for, if it was for Galaxies first or something else, and then brought up again. But at any rate, they I know they were on at least on Naboo. in that game because there was no Ordo Plutonia
Oh,
in
wow.
Galaxies.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, I never played that game, so that's really awesome that they were in that.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Lots of great
Love it.
creatures in there. So
Very cool.
okay. Well, then I think that brings us to the end of our discussion of Trespass. Thank you all for joining us here on Podcast Stardust as we got through it. We hope you've enjoyed the episode and discussion. And if so, then do all the podcast things like subscribe, rate, follow, whatever your podcatcher allows. Again, the reviews are particularly helpful to us, and we appreciate those every time they're left. And then if you want to find more than episodes than what your podcatcher might have available for you, I recommend heading over to retrozapp.com. It'll have all previous 808 episodes of the show, as well as some other great podcasts like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Case Files, Animaniacast, Brews and Blasters, Dork Lair, Doomcast, Enjoy Stuff, Love, Death, and Robots Plus, Superhero Suite, and Warp Trails. And with all of that having been said, Jay, you want to remind everybody where else we can be found online?
Absolutely. We are found very easily on Facebook, Instagram, and X at Podcast Stardust. And you can also hit us up on our other socials and outlets as well, which would be YouTube and YouTube Music. And so you can head over to both of those, like, subscribe, and share those out. And those do also support interaction. So we'd love to see it if you would do that. And we also have our Pinterest page with lots of boards that you can check out for all kinds of Star Wars ideas. And then if you want to interact with us in real time, we do have a Discord room on the RetroZap Discord server. So if you'd like to do that, just head over to the link in our show notes and boom, it'll take you right to where you need to go. And then if you would like to refresh your closet or you're just in need of some new mugs to put your hot cocoa in for the winter time, we have a TeePublic store and you can find us at teepublic.com/user/podcast stardust. Or once again, hit up that link in our show notes. And we do have 7 different show logo designs available. So you're bound to find something you like.
Okay, before we go, you remind everybody what you got going on in cosplay.
Sure. So right now, a little calm, calm before the storm, I guess you could say. But you can always catch me on my Instagram, which is at j.snipscosplay. And I'm gearing up for another convention in December. So the first weekend in December, I will be at GalaxyCon Columbus. And I will be there all 3 days. And so if you are in the area, you can come see me. And I'm super excited because I get to see Hayden Christensen again. And there's also a lot of other great Star Wars people that are going to be there. Natasha Liu Bordizzo is going to be there, and many more. So you'll just have to check out the guest list and hopefully come to Columbus.
Okay. Upcoming on the show on Wednesday, Jay's rounded up some new Star Wars fashion and lifestyle products for us, and she'll present it to us in our, what we like to call World Between Worlds. And then on Friday, we end the week with a look at recent Star Wars news. So with that, just want to say thanks for listening to episode 809 of Podcast Stardust, everyone. Have a great week. And until next time, may the Force be